All right, we are live. Hey, everybody. Andy Baylor here from the Boston Chapter of Miami University Alumni Association. Today, we have a very special guest, none other than Katie Quinn. Katie is a 2008 graduate of Miami University, where she majored in mass communication. She is an author, food journalist, YouTuber, podcaster, and host. She has just recently come out with a new book called Cheese, Wine, and Bread. I actually already picked up a copy on Amazon. So if you're interested in purchasing the book, she's got one as well. Katie can tell you all about it. She literally was published by HarperCollins, and is excited to talk to you about not only the book but about her background and her story at Miami and then the years following. So excited to have Katie on the call today, and I'll turn it over to you, Katie. I would love to just welcome to the presentation, and excited to hear more about your story.
Thank you for having me, Andy. It's so nice to be hanging with you digitally, of course, virtually. So yes, thank you for the fantastic introduction. So it's interesting to think of like what I do now, and he painted a lovely broad picture of what I'm doing now, and to think of how it really is like directly related to what I did at Miami. So I was, as he said, a mass comm major at Miami, and I was a theater minor. So that is pretty much exactly what I do now with my video career, my video hosting career, the YouTube channel. It is equal parts mass comm production, right? These classes that I took at Miami of shooting video, editing video, and this theater side as well, right? This like presentation element of it as well. So it's always fun to think back about. So I am a graduate of Miami from 2008.
Woohoo.
And
it's great year. I mean, right before the Great Recession, we both got out of school.
Yeah, I know, our timing was just impeccable.
I mean, things were going great in 2008, and then 2009 wasn't so good. But
no, it really wasn't. I mean, I really feel like I lucked out because, well, my first job out of Miami was I moved to New York City, and so I was living and working there 2 weeks after graduation. So I did not have the experience of like moving back in with mom and dad, living in the basement for a bit. I was like a shotgun into my post-college life and kind of career. And I want to say I lucked into it, but it actually was far from luck. So I was a mass comm major, as I just said. I had no idea what I wanted to do after school, like zero idea. But I heard of this program at NBC in New York called the Page program. And it was this program where recent college grads could go and get to know the media industry at NBC and kind of dip their toe in these different parts of NBC. And I was like, I want to do that because I don't know what I want to do. And this job is all about not needing to know what you want to do and getting to explore and getting to taste all these different parts of the industry. So I reached out to everyone possible who I could, who had been a page, who had done this program. I asked all of my teachers at Miami, are there any alum that you know who did this? And there were a handful, which was amazing. And I talked to a few of them. They're all super great, really nice. And then Dr. Vogel, who was one of my all-time favorite professors at Miami, he was the reason that I declared mass communications my major. I went to him and was like, I really want to do this program. I've talked to a few people and nothing really seems to be moving. Like, do you have any advice for me? Any last kind of advice? And he was like, yeah, actually, reach out to this person. Her name's Lindsay. Reach out to her. She just did the Page program. Maybe she can help. So I did, called her, talked to her. What I did not know at the time was that she was the assistant to the CEO and president of
Wow.
NBC Universal. So talked to Lindsay, had like a Miami pride, like Ohio love kind of chat, and just talked about our interests. And she was like, well, I'll see if I can get your resume in the right hands. The next day, I got a call to interview for the program, and that was the beginning of my entire career. So that was the start of it, and I can quite literally thank the connections that I had at Miami for that, which is really cool to think about.
That's crazy.
Andy, do you want me to keep? Yeah.
No, this is good. I'm just going to interject with one question. So, actually, a statement and then a question. So, 2008 graduate, Miami University, Mass Comm, Dr. Vogel. What was it like moving to a big city, away from Oxford, away from our beautiful, pristine campus, to all of a sudden you're in the heart of like Midtown Manhattan? You got to find a place to live. You're looking for the job. Like, tell me about that experience.
It was totally bonkers. It was I felt totally in over my head. So not only did I go to school at Miami, and Oxford is so beautiful and cozy and small, I grew up in Athens, Ohio, which is where Ohio University is. And it's actually quite similar to Oxford in many ways. It's a beautiful, small college town in Ohio. So my eyes were opened. Well, we can talk about later. Also, my palate was opened. I think I realized that there's all of these foods and these cultures, these cuisines that I was previously completely ignorant to. Moving to New York was an eye-opener in every way, but it was amazing. And and I felt prepared too. I didn't really feel like a fish out of water. I felt like, this is the next step. This is what I've been preparing for. This is what I've been learning to do, and like when I was at Miami, I had studied abroad. So I felt like, I had it in my toolbox, if we want to use this kind of overused metaphor, but if we want to use it, everything in my toolbox was preparing me at that point to go and be totally overwhelmed by New York, but be ready to tackle it.
That's awesome. I can identify with that. Coming from a small town, being in a big city kind of vibe. But one question I had for you was, what was it like being part of the NBC Page program? Like, tell us about the duties that you had to perform as an NBC Page. I mean, were you like sitting cast members for SNL? Like, what were you doing?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so just a quick context for anyone who's seen the Tina Fey show 30 Rock. There is a character, Kenneth the Page. That is not a made up role. Kenneth the Page is that he was a page, and that was me and a group of 50 of us who were all running around backstage at NBC, more or less in an intern type of role. So what did our days look like? We worked 6 to 7 days a week, every week. We were paid minimum wage living in New York City. And well, no, it wasn't minimum wage. It was like 10, I think it may have been, oh, my memory. It was too long ago now. But it was like $10 an hour to live in New York City. Not very much. I mean, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches were like my go-to for lunch and dinner most days. But it was just an incredible experience because, as you mentioned, we were working behind the scenes at the shows. So I worked Saturday Night Live, seating guests coming to see the show, then setting up for the after party. So I would seat guests for the show, stand in the studio, watch the show start. If anyone in the audience was like took out their phone to take pictures, that was our role to like step up and whisper to them, like, please put your phone away, things like that. I also did that at Late Night with Conan O'Brien. That shows my age probably. Now pages do that with Jimmy Fallon. And I worked at the Today Show, similar kind of thing, helping guests, ushering guests in, taking them to hair and makeup, and making sure they got to the studio on time. I worked in NBC News specials. So that was a lot of political oriented things. This was actually the year that Obama was elected, which was a very exciting, like just a very really exciting environment to be around for that. So yeah, we were basically just running around doing whatever anyone kind of asked us to do, even if it was getting lunch for Justin Timberlake, we'd run and go do that. If it was making the reservations for someone's dinner, for someone's airline ticket, we were basically just like the all hands on deck help.
Got it. Okay. And that makes sense. So this whole time, when you're doing all these tasks for NBC News, I mean, you're getting some great experience. You're hands-on, completely hands-on. You're not getting paid extremely well, but did you have in the back of your mind, like, okay, I'm doing this now, but my dream is to do this? And when was that moment for you? Or what was that moment?
So I definitely had the perspective, which like you needed to have, right? Because it was intense hours. And like there was a period of time where I was on assignment. That's when it's called, when you were working with a specific show or in a specific department. There was a period of time when I was on assignment with Saturday Night Live and the Today Show. So wow. I was working Saturday Night Live. I would go into work at like 10 p.m., come home at like 3:30 in the morning, 4, and then Sunday morning, right? Jeez. Monday morning, I would have to be at 30 Rock again at 4:30 in the morning. So my body was just like super confused, but like, listen, I'm not complaining at all. First of all, I was so excited to be there. All of the other pages were also going through this. So, like when there's a group of us having the same crappy hours and like getting the same horrible pay, it's like kind of okay. It was just a really exciting time because yeah, those experiences were really incredible. But that's why the perspective was necessary, because it's a year-long program. So I was really just like, this is a year. I can do this for a year, right? We can all do anything for a year. I can do this for a year. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I actually didn't have that like long-term goal that I had my eyes on. I was just like, I am trying to experience all of this so that at the end of this year, I have a sense of what my goal should be, right? Yep. So I was just like a sponge in that year, really. And I think it did start to clarify, like, oh, I like this, but I kind of like this element from this, and it all kind of helped steer me.
Well, let me ask you one other question too, because this is my understanding of what happened for you career-wise. You went from that role to Today Show contributor and today.com.
Yes.
And through that lens, you were able to add a perspective around food, around cooking. Like, tell me about how it went from Page to like today.com, Today Show contributor, and tell me if I'm not getting the facts straight here as far as what actually happened.
No, that is what happened. So my assignment at the Today Show, like, essentially led to me working at today.com, right? Because you get to know the people there, they trust you, you work hard, and so when a job opportunity arises and there's a stack of resumes, it's like, oh, this Katie Quinn girl, I remember her. She was here as a page. She worked with us. She was a hard worker and I liked her, or whatever. So that was awesome. And the Today Show was the thing that I was most drawn to, because I liked SNL, but it was a little too entertainment-y for me. And I liked the news department, but it was a little too newsy for me. And I felt that the Today Show really struck this amazing balance that I felt very drawn to. And I liked the live atmosphere. So when that job opportunity arose and I applied, I got it. And this was, I just feel like I'm dating myself, and also therefore you too, Andy, sorry.
It's fine. I mean, I think Matt Lauer still worked there at the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he definitely did. Let's see. So this was right when television shows got websites, like really, like, and this is when today.com became a thing, and that NBC was like, oh, we should dedicate resources to the show's website because the web is like bigger and people, we should have a web presence. And so, I mean, I kind of lucked out in that I was this young, hungry person working there. I had experience shooting and editing video from my production mass comm classes at Miami. So when I started working at today.com, they were like, oh, we want to start doing more video. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, give me a camera and I'll go backstage and do these behind the scenes, web extra videos. And so they gave me a camera and just basically let me loose. Like, I was the first person in this role at the website, and I basically got to make it my own. And this is where food comes in, actually, because I got to interview any of the guests that came on the show. And yeah, sure, there were the, kind of Kim Kardashian-esque people who came through the show. But the people who I got really excited to interview were these chefs that I was so enamored by the food they were creating. So, Tom Colicchio, Thomas Keller, Daniel Boulud, Ina Garten, Martha Stewart would come on the show like once a month. So I was drawn to them. So I actually created a whole web extra series featuring chefs, and it was called Today's Cooking School. And that's how I was would start to kind of marry food into that production world I was in.
That's so cool. I mean, talk about in business, we talk about defining a new market and creating a new market. You were the tip of the spear for today.com for the content that was being put out there. And then you chose to go after a line that you really were passionate about, which was cooking, which was food. So what happened next? How did it lead to more appearances on the show? How did you become more reputable in terms of your role on the Today Show? And then my other question is, why did you leave NBC to go off and do your own thing at that point?
Okay, so
a lot. Sorry, you can take that piece by piece.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I started to kind of make the transition from behind the camera, the person shooting the video, and then taking it back to my desk and editing it together. Starting to do some more stuff in front of the camera, because basically they were starting to put more resources into .com.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I started to have a team of people. And when that happens, there can be another human to hold the camera. And some of the people we were interviewing, chefs in particular, are not particularly good on camera. They don't have media training, especially then. It's a little different now where celebrity chef is such a thing. It was at the time as well, maybe not to the extent where it is now, because Instagram didn't exist then. The talking to your smartphone didn't really exist. So a lot of people, chefs especially, did not feel comfortable talking to a camera. So that's where I came in. As the team grew, I was like, here's a chef that I am going to interview for a web extra. Listen, I've talked with their manager or their agent or whatever. They're not comfortable looking at the camera. So to make their experience better, to make for a better video, I'll interview them on camera, right? So I'll do the question, and I was able to hand off the camera to a coworker who would take the video. I would still take that footage back to my desk and edit it together. The rest of my job was still very much the production, the nuts and bolts of it. But that's how I first started to get those opportunities. And then I got some really, really cool opportunities. I got to interview Tina Fey on camera. I got to, even people like Weird Al Yankovic, I got to interview on camera, which is so fun. But those now I had video clips, and that is enough to then create a reel, right? That's enough to be here, other businesses, other jobs. This is what I'm capable of. This is what I want to do. At that time, I was kind of okay, I would like to pursue this path. So the reason I left NBC was to pursue a job like that. So I got a job offer at a video news startup called Now This News. They're still around. They're still doing great stuff. I was in that I helped start it up, this startup. I was one of the first handful of employees, and that job was specifically as a host. So at that point, I was not doing the production of holding the camera and editing the video. That's when I stepped into kind of the host role. Got it.
That makes sense. And I was just thinking about from a timeline perspective, how long did the Now This role last? Like how long did that go for?
That was about 2 years.
2 years. Okay. And then if you fast forward, I might be jumping steps here. So again, it's your career in your life and you've lived it, but like, talk to me about how we go from there to all of a sudden you're creating content on YouTube and you're focusing on travel, food, what they call vlogging. And you might need to explain what vlogging means to myself and the audience, but like, talk to me about that part of it. Cause that's, now I think we're talking about like additional content creation. You're taking what you learned behind the scenes at NBC and you're putting yourself out there, not only from a content perspective, but as a brand. I mean, you're kind of your own brand ambassador at that point, right?
Totally. And like, I still am. Like it kind of doesn't stop when you stop working for a company. So that was it. Basically, after 2 years at Now This News, I was like, this is great. I like this. I want to see what else is out there. Like, I want to see where else there might be opportunities. And I knew that I had this interest in food that I still wanted to pursue, because at Now This News, sure, I got to pitch and do some of these food segments, interviewing more chefs, going to restaurants, blah, blah, blah. But it was the daily news grind, right? So it was that NBC News kind of political realm that I had experienced when I was a page that I was like, oh, it's a little too newsy for me. But I did find myself back in that kind of realm. It was a bit of news and a bit of lifestyle, but I was like, okay, I'm still most interested in food. So after 2 years and Now This, I decided to go freelance. I decided to just see if I could get work that way, basically. And in order to so I did get some jobs straight away, but things were slow, right? It's slow when you make a leap like that. So I was like, what can I do with this free time that's not feeling hopeless? And my answer to that was to start the YouTube channel, because I realized, oh, I could take all of these skills that I've learned in the past, 5 to 7 years of my career at that point, which is the behind the scenes stuff and the on camera stuff. I can put up a tripod and a camera and shoot myself making a recipe, talking about food, talking about a recipe, and then go edit it together and put it up on YouTube. And I can then send that link to everyone that I've worked with at NBC, at, Tastemade, which are, all of these media connections that I had gained over my career thus far. I was like, now this is a way for me to show people what I can do and what I want to be doing more of. So being a little one-woman band was kind of my key to really starting to do the work I wanted to do. And then I'll quickly mention that part of the reason that took off was because of all the work I had previously done. So I reached out to all the producers I had worked with at the Today Show and said, like, this is what I'm doing now. And here's the video, here's a link, check it out. And one of the producers of the Today Show was like, whoa, you did this video about how to get into a mango? It was like a mango hack video. And she was like, come on the show and show it to the anchors and show it to America. And so I did. And that was like, obviously a big turning point for me.
Wow. That's
and
cool.
The channel.
No, that's really cool. And then so your readership and your followership goes up because of those appearances. You're connecting with your producers and your former colleagues at NBC, and that helps really spearhead it. That's awesome. And then how do you go from video production to written print journalism, where you've now produced a very comprehensive book around your favorite recipes, around European influences. I mean, first of all, I'm impressed. Second of all, like, where does cheese, wine, and bread come from? Like, what's the nexus of cheese, wine, and bread?
Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for getting your hands on a copy. That means a lot to me. This book was actually, it makes sense. It seems random, but it also, to me, I don't know, to me, it's like a very logical next step. So basically I moved to London with my husband for my husband's job. And after living in New York for 10 years, and I was like, I can still do the YouTube channel from over there. So cool. And I got a video project with the Comté Cheese Association. This is an amazing French cheese. And this video project had me staying in France for a very immersive week, learning all about cheese. And I was like, this is amazing. And, typically in my job and with the videos that I create, it's very much like dip my toe in something and move on. Dip my toe, go to the next project. With this, I was like, I never want to leave this. I want to keep learning more about cheese. I had always said I love cheese, right? I was like one of those people like, cheese is great, I love cheese, without knowing what that meant, without understanding how milk becomes cheese, right? So I think my mind was blown by this. And I just wanted to learn more. So I went back to London, started, working at a cheese shop behind the cheese slate, learning more about cheese. And I realized that there was a story to be told about cheese and about what I call the trinity of fermentation: cheese, wine, and bread. The three best things, right?
Yeah, according to the book, it was really just this drawing, right? It was a concept of like these three things, and then it expanded into like, from that point, how do you bring in specific recipes? How do you tie in the cultural influences? I mean, you worked at an amazing school. You went to an amazing school for chefs in Paris, right? So you had that background as well. But like, how do you build basically a recipe book plus weave in all of the amazing stories at that point?
Right. Great question. Right. Okay. And so an important fact there is that I went to Le Cordon Bleu Culinary School in Paris after I started the YouTube channel, but before I moved to London. And that was pretty significant in the fact that it gave me some credibility as a food person, right? So as opposed to just being a personality on YouTube making recipe videos, I now had this credibility. And I wrote a cookbook called Avocados, published by a little publishing house, an indie publishing house in New York called Short Stack Editions. So I had that under my belt, right? And I wouldn't have gotten that book deal had I not gone to culinary school. So I had that under my belt. And so when I had, as you mentioned, Andy, it was really like this spark of inspiration, like cheese, wine, and bread. These are my favorite things. Wait, these are all fermented items that fermentation's so trendy, but everyone talks about it in terms of kombucha and kimchi. And I was like, okay, there's something here and I need to dig into it. And I had the culinary school background in, I had done that. I had done this avocados cookbook. So again, I was ready. Just kind of like coming from Miami, going to New York City. It was like, yes, I'm entering a realm that feels new and I kind of don't know what I'm doing, but I feel prepared. I've done certain things that have set me up really well to do this. So I put together a book proposal, and in the book proposal, I was like, what would I ideally want this book to be? I'm living in Europe. I want to travel around. I want to meet the artisans making these things. So right there, I knew that the travel element that you can kind of, that is evident from just like the illustration on the book cover, right? The kind of traveling around, traveling through Europe. I was like that.
This makes it simple for people like me too.
Right, exactly. It's almost like a children's book. Like, this is what she does. This is what she does. I was like, in an ideal world, I would get to travel around Europe and do that. And I knew I wanted recipes to be a part of it, right? Because I wanted people to kind of cook along with me and experience this. And I knew that I wanted the recipes to be tied to my experiences and the people I met. And of course, these items, cheese, wine, and bread, obviously. Yeah, and so it really just, when I was coming up with the proposal, I was like, in my ideal world, what kind of book would this be? What are the kinds of books that I love to read? You know, there is a story there. It's not a straight up cookbook. There's a story, and I get to know characters, and yeah. And then I pitched it, and I got the book deal. I was like, oh, cool! I actually get to do this, and I was off to the races.
That's so cool. I mean, like my mom actually is a journalist. She contributed to media publications like the New York Times as a freelance work as a freelance journalist, and then she also wrote a series of children's books. So I've heard through her eyes like what the business is like to get in and get published. I mean, how hard was it? Like, what was that process like to submit a proposal, and then like most people don't hear back and get accepted right away? I mean, to get that proposal through, like what did you have to do? Like, what was that like?
Right. Yeah. Great question. And yes, it can be really hard. And it was hard for me to a certain extent, but I think that my biggest, tip is to find an agent who's really into your idea. So I talked to a few different literary agents, and I met this one woman. And again, like, I don't think she would have talked to me had I not done this small cookbook called Avocados that was published from a Brooklyn publishing house. I mean, it's a great book. It's kind of like a coffee table, cute book. There were like 21 recipes. I don't think she would have even given me the time of day had I not had that kind of under my belt. Anyway, talked to her though, and she was like, this is a great idea. I want to read that book. Like, I think like, let's pitch it out. And then essentially, because I don't know editors at publishing houses, right? So she essentially acted as my gatekeeper, or the gatekeeper to the entire literary publishing world, because she has relationships with those publishers. So once I got my book proposal together, and by the way, that was, I poured myself into that. I wrote the first 5 chapters of the book for the book proposal. I included sample recipes. I did a market breakdown. I mean, here's where, the business stuff comes in. I did market research about what kind of books are out there right now. Where is the void? What are the trends? What are people interested in? And I showed that there is a rising interest in fermentation. I showed like the trendiness, but that there's this huge void that people don't think of it as the foods on our daily table. And a lot of it is kind of like bro-y. Like it's a lot of men in that field. Like there needs to be a young, energetic woman talking about fermentation and doing it in this way. And then why I'm the person to do it, right? So then it was basically a pitch of like me and everything I'd done in my career, right? So saying, and hey, here's my YouTube channel. This is the audience that likes what I do, that I have a following. They're going to want to buy this book also, right? So it's just like a pitch of like, here's the idea. If you like the idea, great. Now, here's why these demographics would also love this idea. And here's why I'm the person to do it. So it was kind of an all-encompassing pitch, and it took months to get together. And then, my agent would give me feedback, and I would help. She helped me kind of like really polish it. And then we pitched it around to publishing houses.
That's so cool. I mean, and then to be published by one of the top publishing houses, HarperCollins is a great name, great publisher. Amazing. I mean, amazing story. I've already read through the book. I've copied or taken photos of some of the recipes and sent them out to friends, including a woman who's friends with my wife and I that loves all things cheese. So we're gonna make sure
you've got good friends, Andy. You've got good friends.
We're gonna make sure that
awesome.
we promote it at least amongst the Boston community here. So
thank you so much.
So I've done enough questions. I could probably go on about other topics too, but I want to hear from the audience. If the audience members have questions from the Alumni Association, any current students out there that are interested in getting into the line of work that Katie's into. And by the way,
I'm just gonna show some pictures while you're talking there, just to show the beauty.
Love it. By the way, who did all the photography work for the book?
So I did the majority of the photos in the book because I was traveling and had to, I couldn't afford a photographer to come with me the whole time. I'm in Rome, and this is the pictures I took in Rome. But I also hired an illustrator, and she illustrated beautiful. She's the same woman who did the cover art, and she just did. Let's see, find some other beautiful illustrations she did. So like this is from when I was in Sicily, and she did like a beautiful illustration. So there's illustrations throughout, photographs. I took the majority of the photographs, but not all of them. I did hire some amazing photographers. I hired a photographer in France when I was doing my bread apprenticeship. So I actually worked at boulangeries in France for this. This whole book, when I say traveled for it, I mean deep dive. I mean, I immersed myself in these things. I worked at boulangeries in Paris and all around France. I worked the vineyards and the wine harvests in Italy, and I made cheese working on a goat farm in rural England. And I did hire a photographer in France and a photographer in Italy. And my amazing husband, who's very talented, took photos in England. And I did a whole recipe shoot for all of the recipes. So I had an amazing recipe photographer too. So cool. I can't take all the credit by any means.
I mean, still, like, it's safe to say that this is your
my
life,
baby.
Your life's work. Is how it's amazing.
Yeah.
With that being said, there are some questions from the audience who are eager to hear more about your story and more about the book. I'm going to start off in no particular order. These might be more like rapid fire. So first one is, what brand of store-bought pasta do you prefer for the red wine nut and cheese recipe for those who don't have the time to make it homemade?
What brand of pasta? Okay, first of all,
pasta. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, totally. Great question. So first of all, I have a few pasta recipes in the Italy section. The tortellini is a fresh pasta that I teach you how to make. The red wine pasta, I suggest get it. It should be a dried pasta. This is this is a pantry staple dish. Dried pasta that you just grab out of the pantry, red wine. What else is in it? It's there are very few ingredients: olive oil, cheese, right? Parmesan or pecorino, whatever you have. So these are pantry staple things. In terms of pasta, I do have a favorite brand. It's called Rumo.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% positive that it's in America because I haven't lived in America for the past 5 years or so, but it's here in Italy, obviously. It was also in London. I could find it in London. Rummo.
Okay.
If it's not in the States, I mean, Di Cecco, that's a good one, and that's pretty common. It honestly doesn't matter that much. For this recipe, it's any spaghetti that you have in your pantry, grab it. And these ingredients are going to make it delicious. If you like garlic, if you like red pepper flakes, it'll be a good dish.
Perfect. Did I misspeak too? There's no pine nuts or nuts in that spaghetti, drunken spaghetti?
There is. Oh, okay. There is. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
And if you're allergic to nuts, you would have to cut those out. But that was just what my brain was thinking of at the time.
Yes. No. Yes. Yeah. Just do it. Just go without the nuts if you're allergic to nuts. Because really, the main flavors, the nuts add a great flavor and yes, a great texture element. But the cheese, especially if you use a Parmesan. So in the recipe, I said to do pecorino. Pecorino as opposed to Parmigiano Reggiano. Pecorino is going to be a little saltier, has a little bit more of a kick. Parmigiano Reggiano is a little nuttier, a little sweeter. So I would say if you're going to go without the nuts, do pecorino and some Parmigiano Reggiano, some Parmesan in there. That'll bring those flavor elements. But again, like the real hit of flavor in that recipe comes from the garlic, red chili flakes, and then the red wine, which adds not just a flavor, but a beautiful, it's like a beautiful plum hue to those noodles. But yes, definitely doable without nuts. Sorry, I feel like I was blabbering on there.
No, it's all good. Speaking of other, thanks for showing that. Any specific page number to reference for
yes.
that?
157.
Okay, for those of you following along at home, page 157.
And it's in the wine Italy section.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Katie. Sticking with the questions around the book and around food, please share tips for figuring out pairings of wines and cheeses for a novice person that doesn't know how to pair wines and cheeses, like myself.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I have in the book like some do's and don'ts because I knew that people would demand it. So I'll give a couple of answers, because my first answer, and this is the one that honestly is the most truthful, is that if you like a wine and if you like a cheese, it's a good pairing. Like it's really hard to go wrong. And and when I worked at the cheese shop too, customers would ask us all the time, and the answer really is, if you like a wine and you like a cheese, they will go well together. But if you're not a red wine, because some people would be like, so here's another maybe boilerplate answer I could give you. So like a nice, a mild, kind of fruity red wine that still has some tannins, like a Sangiovese, right? Medium bodied, is going to pair really well with like a brie, right? And a slightly more aged brie. Brie is meant to be eaten relatively young, but maybe a slightly more aged brie. So like some of those more mushroomy, earthy flavors can come out. That's going to pair really well together. Guess what? If you don't like red wine, and if you don't like brie, that gets not a good combo, right? So if you would be better suited to get like a nice sparkling wine, right? And so I do think, by the way, that like the effervescence of a sparkling wine, like a champagne, like a prosecco, like a cava, does go really well with certain cheeses, like a cheddar, like a really nutty, mature cheddar, right? And if it has like some of those crystallizations from being aged, I just think it balanced, because it's super savory, and that umami-ness that it brings is balanced out so well with the sweet, light effervescence of something like a prosecco.
Love it.
Is this helping at all? It's kind of like,
no, those are good tips. I think, from my understanding too, like it's not just like there's no perfect magic bullet answer. It's almost your own personal preference and what you like to drink and what you like to eat from a cheese perspective. Like
absolutely, 100%. I will say one kind of tip that can be helpful within that understanding of what you like. Great, you can't go wrong. It's nice to balance, right? It's nice to balance things out. Hence, with like the really umami cheddar, even like a Parmigiano Reggiano, right? Like this is a very umami forward cheese. That balances out really nicely with a light, sweet, bubbly wine. So you're looking for balance in a lot of these.
That makes perfect sense. No, thank you for explaining that. We have a couple more around food, and we have a couple of random questions. Katie, your call. Do you want the food recipe questions, or do you want the random, more career-based questions?
Oh man, I have no preference. I'm gonna put it back on you, Andy.
Okay, all right. It's my job to make sure we ask the right ones.
No, but thank you for asking. I appreciate that.
So sticking with the book, what was the process for choosing what recipes, flavors, vintages went into the book over others?
I made a lot of food. I made a lot of food. And actually, even in like the manuscript that I turned in, it actually still changed a little bit, because I would keep making recipes. The number of times I recipe tested these, especially some of, is like absurd, like so many times. But I was like, listen, if I don't want to make these in my own kitchen all the time, then it's not worth putting in. Like, I don't like cookbooks where it's like, I would never make this, or maybe once in a decade, right? I really wanted dishes that you want to make, right? And yeah, some of them are a little more special occasion, but barely, like they're all very doable. And some of them like feel so fancy and special, but they're still really doable. Like the red wine pasta, for example. There's a cake, wine and olive oil cake. So in the cake recipe, there's white wine and olive oil in the cake, and then it's a red wine buttercream frosting.
Wow.
So it's amazing, right? It's like a showstopper, and there's a boozy mascarpone filling on the inside. It's a showstopper. It is my husband's absolute favorite cake now, and it's the favorite cake of like every party I've ever brought it to. It's a real showstopper, but it's simple. It's a simple cake recipe. Anyway, I'm going off topic.
No, that was good. No, that was good. Can I tell you just one other thing? Like, if you had to pick one recipe, actually, let's play a quick game. I'll do my favorite recipe. I'll say brownies with cheddar because they're amazing. But if you had to pick one recipe, what would it be?
Why are you doing this to me? Making me pick a favorite child is what you're doing.
You can just say all.
No,
fine.
but no. It's a fair question. Okay, I'm gonna go with wine cookies.
Okay.
They're I'll see if I can pull it up here quickly, but they're the most simple baked good recipe ever. Well, you can kind of see them in there. These are them. That's not the close up. This is the spread picture. But it's flour, sugar, olive oil, wine.
Easy.
Equal parts of all of those except for flour. It's so easy. You don't need a measuring. Like it's so easy, and they're so good. They're so good with your morning cup of coffee or tea. They're good as a snack. They're good for the little sweet bite after dinner. They're just good to have on hand.
Love it.
They're also great as gifts as well. Put them in a bag or in a jar and give them as gifts. They're fantastic.
That's a great pick. Simple, easy, delicious. So we have time for maybe like a couple more questions if you can hang on. I know we kind of had a rough. I'm
here.
Okay.
I'm here for you.
We'll do a couple more. So it's kind of a good segue to another question. We went over which recipes to include, but another person said the culinary culture. Oh, there's the red wine.
The wine. Yep.
Perfect.
Exactly.
And is it red or white wine?
So it's either, actually,
Okay.
and it's going to be hard to see in this photo, but these ones are made with red wine, and then those ones are made with white wine.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I can see the difference.
So it's basically whatever, if you have any like leftover wine that you didn't finish from like a few days ago, but you don't want to pour it down the drain, use it in this recipe.
Awesome. So I just found the segue to the next question. So the culinary cultures you explore definitely focus on simple things done exceptionally well. Great point. How do you practice restraint? Here's the question part. How do you practice restraint and frankly know just when to stop yourself as you develop a dish? Some may say the cheddar brownies could be extra, but it sounds brilliant.
Yeah, I love this question, and so great. And also I love the statement that then the question followed. So cheddar brownie, I'll use this as an example of like developing recipe. So first of all, it wasn't my idea. I wasn't just like, let me think of something random to do. It was when I was working at a cheese shop in London, and one of my cheesemonger friends was like, "Oh, have you ever tried adding cheddar to a brownie mix?" I was like, "No." My answer, of course, to that is no. That sounds weird. I'm skeptical. But she was like, "Oh yeah, no, me and my friend did it for a dinner party. It's great. Just like break it up, a mature cheddar, a nice mature cheddar, break it up into chunks and throw it in with the brownie mix and bake it. It's amazing."
Is the
So it was like,
concern because it's a savory thing and a traditionally sweet chocolatey item, or what's the holdup?
well, yeah, I think that the holdup is like these two things. I've never heard of these together. Like,
Yeah.
is that going to be good? Is that going to be
think-
like putting ketchup on ice cream or something? Like, I like ketchup and I like ice cream, but like together, I don't know. Yeah, so the holdup was just like, I've never heard of it. I don't believe that it's gonna work. But then when I started thinking about it and talking with her, I was like, I see it, because the sweet salty combo, right? We all know that like that's key to a lot of the most amazing desserts. That's why little bits of flaky sea salt are added on top of the best brownies, for instance, or the best chocolate chip cookie. It is that sweet and savory combo that really makes it craveable, right? That makes you feel like I need a second bite of this. So it's not overwhelmingly sweet. So it's like, okay, there's something there. There's something there. Then I made them, and my mind was blown, because the cheddar takes on like, it kind of gets caramelized in the oven. When I first had a bite straight out of the oven, me and my husband both, and he was like, it's almost like it's white chocolate, but it's not, because then this like savory, kind of nutty, nuanced element from the cheddar. If you get a good quality aged cheddar, it has these flavor nuances. It's more than just a straight up salt, right? It brings more to it, but it's not overwhelming. It's just a really amazing balance. I didn't believe it until I made it, and I was like, the world needs to know.
Yep.
World needs to know this, and I'm gonna carry the torch.
Because I was going to say, I mean, that's my favorite. If you can point to it in the book, I think everybody should make the recipe. You got to buy the book first, by the way, but then make the recipe. So,
thank you, Andy. You should be my publicist. Thank you.
So I guess we have time for one more question and then giveaway. But while you're putting up the picture of the brownies and
let me find
the page number, I'll get to the last question.
Here we go.
Man. Look at those.
So this is page 110 and 111 there, and there's another shot too that I'll show. But yeah, and it's at the end of the cheese section.
Love it. I mean, they just look fantastic, so I can't wait to see what they taste like.
They're stinking good, man. Not a single person has been like, I tried it and it's not for me. Everyone has been like, my new favorite. Also, and sorry, I know we're running out. I just quickly want to say too, the brownie recipe itself, the batter before you add in the chocolate chunks is really stinking good, if I do say so myself. I recipe tested the living daylights out of this brownie recipe, because basically brownies can either be kind of cakey or more on the fudgy side. I love a good fudgy brownie, and I recipe tested this so much. It's got browned butter, it's got brown sugar and granulated sugar. It's fudgy and amazing, and then you add the cheddar and it's just perfection.
Wow. I mean, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I mean, I haven't even tasted it yet. It's already my favorite recipe. I think I'll love it. So we'll get back to you on the.
Let me know, Andy.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, last question. Then we're gonna get to 3 book giveaways, because I know you want to actually give away free copies of the book, which
I do.
Awesome. So we're gonna get to that. But last question also has a statement in the first part of it. Someone wrote, "First off, Katie, can we be friends?" Question mark. I mean,
yes.
We'll find out who this is from. I'm sure you'll be friends with anybody who's affiliated with the Miami community.
That's true.
if you've got time in your busy schedule. And then she says, "Congratulations on all of your accomplishments. Keep up the amazing work. In a time where we are creating content all day, every day, how do you keep up with the on-demand culture that we live in?" Also, more of a technical question: what would be your recommendation for a mic audio editing program for someone looking to create a podcast?
Oh, that's exciting. Great questions.
Right?
Who wrote that question?
We'll find out from Emily, but
we don't have a name. Well, nameless commenter. I will happily be friends with you. Come to Southern Italy and we'll have an aperitivo. It'll be great. Yes, creating content is kind of a never-ending thing. And yeah, it helps to create content about something that you're passionate about. That's for sure. I never get sick of talking about food that I am inspired by, food that I love, food that I make, food that I eat when I'm going out, right? Like it's just, if content creation is this like never ending beast that always needs to be fed, well, guess what? I'm a human that always needs to be fed, and I am constantly eating new amazing things. And then there's just so many rabbit holes to go down with food, the people who make it, the places where it comes from. So that's how I'm able to kind of stay on top of that hamster wheel. Exciting that you want to start a podcast. I guess this is something I didn't talk about in talking about all of the things. I talked more about the YouTube channel, but I started my own podcast, the Keep It Quickie podcast. And that's been going, that has, like 75 episodes. That's been going for, I think, 2 years. And then I recently launched another podcast with Food 52, the Food 52 podcast network. This show is called the Either Side Eaters, and I co-host it with another amazing woman. Her name's Jen Panomrat of the YouTube channel Just Eat Life. And so now I'm doing 2 podcasts, and the gear I have is I have a Shure microphone, Shure, a Shure microphone. I'm like not as techie as I should be. I forget the exact model, but like if you just Google it, you'll find it. And I think that I also saw like a YouTube channel that was like reviewing gear that's good for a podcast or something like that. I have an audio recorder that is called Zoom H6. It's a fantastic audio recorder. And so you can record just from that, or you can plug in with an XLR cord to a good microphone. So that's what I've done with my Shure microphone. That's the gear I use. And then I also have a windscreen and a little table tripod. And for my own, Food 52 edits the Either Side Eaters podcast. I edit my own podcast, and I use Adobe Audition. So I edit my videos on Adobe Premiere Pro, and I edit my podcast on Adobe Audition. So it's the Adobe Creative Cloud.
Awesome. No, thank you for those tips. And we found out who the anonymous person who wants to be friends with you. Her name is Janet from class of 2009. So hopefully we'll get you in touch with Janet. And
class of 09, we were there at the same time.
It's right back to back. So I think it's a friendship match made in heaven kind of thing. So
I think so.
Last thing before we wrap, we want to give away the 3 copies of the books. By getting this book, Cheese, Wine, and Bread, you'll be unlocking a world into Katie's recipes and her life's work. So I'm going to announce the 3 winners and their class years, and then we'll make sure that you and your team can send out the copies to the correct people. The first person is Regina Knoll, class of 1978. So congrats, Regina.
Congrats, Regina.
You have won a copy of Katie's book. We'll be sending that out. The next person is Eileen Stenerson, class of 1984. You'll also be receiving a copy of Katie's book. And then last but not least, Allison Block, class of 2017. You will be getting a free copy of Cheese, Wine, and Bread by Katie Quinn. So it's about I think 6:59 or 7:59 over in Italy. So we've hit our time limit. But just thank you so much, Katie, for the time today. It was really insightful. I hope you enjoyed getting to talk to me and getting to talk to the audience today. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts, just thank you for having me. I'm excited to have talked with you all. Thank you for the incredible questions you all asked. And Andy, thank you for the incredible questions that you asked. It was fun to kind of relive all that and how Miami had such a role in everything that I've done since. I hope that the winners like this book. And if you weren't a winner, I hope you go get it and I hope you love it.
Thanks so much, Katie. Have a great night, and thank you again.
Thank you, Andy. Bye, everyone. Bye.